Welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Sarah Thompson. Hi, welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Big Homeopath, Sarah Thompson. So, one of the gifts that I offer to the world is to stay on my purpose. To paraphrase Byron Katie, I get joy out of being in my business and not in anybody else's. So, the two questions that I ask myself when I am faced with a professional decision are, does it make me a better homeopath? And does it serve my clients on their journey to their higher selves? And this keeps things wonderfully simple for me. If it doesn't fit into those two categories, it's not what I'm supposed to do. You know that I'm the big homeopath, but something you may not know about me is that I'm also the anarcho-homeopath. Miss Smith does not go to Washington. So, when I was asked to join the steering committee to get something called safe harbor legislation passed in Maine, my reaction to that was, well, this is probably not really on my purpose, it's probably not really something that I should focus my attention on. Yeah, okay, no, so it was like a total visceral recoil with poorly suppressed profanity. The anarcho-homeopath does not cold call people and tell them that she's involved in a legislative effort and would they like to get on board. This is not something I do. Haven't I done a ton of hard work identifying what doesn't go in my life and jettisoning it? I am a time billionaire, and that resource should not be squandered. Well, someday I will stop making third-person pronouncements about what the big homeopath does. There is a difference between being firm in my principles and being rigid in my responses. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that I'm on the steering committee for the Safe Harbor Maine project, and I want to tell you a little bit about it. There are actually two different principles at play here for me. The first one is not so much the content of the bills as that it's in my daily planner to do something every day that is hard or scary. Also, I get a gold star. So when I have a gut level reaction of horror to something, as I did in that situation, that's a pretty good indicator that there's a dragon rustling around in the cave somewhere getting ready to lay waste to the countryside until I go and show up on the doorstep with a sword. Okay, so let me finish my tea. And I did, and I was asked again, and there were clearly damsels in distress, so I joined the team. Usually at this point I would segue into a research discussion, but as this blog is a resource for practitioners and students, I think it's important that we actually talk about this information today because this is useful. So safe harbor legislation is within the parameters of my principles. I want to pop something up on the screen for you here, which is the practice of medicine as it is defined in Maine. I'm going to read something. And it's so broad that your grandmother's chicken soup or your pastor's blessing technically counts. The gist is that everyone who offers a holistic or energetic therapy in a non-licensable modality, meaning that it's generally accepted as safe, non-harmful, could technically be construed as committing this Class C felony of practicing medicine without a license. Unless licensed by the board, an individual may not relieve or cure a human disease, ailment, defect, or complaint, whether physical or mental, or of physical and mental origin, by attendance or by advice. So there's more in there, obviously, but that's not a misrepresentation. I did not cherry pick that. Those are all true in the spirit that I'm representing them to you. And that's what it says, and that's what it means, according to a number of lawyers. So whether there's any intent at this time to enforce that definition, no amount of disclosure or insurance protects a practitioner from an accusation such as this, or if you're a practitioner that holds a license in a different modality, if you're outside of your scope of practice, you're not safe. So if you're a massage therapist but you do herbalism, still not safe from an accusation of being accused of practicing medicine without a license, which fortunately has not happened in Maine, but it has happened in other places. And this brings me to the reason that I got involved in this in the first place, which is that I am the secretary of the board of the Maine Homeopathic Initiatives, which was set up, one of its primary purposes was to start this low-cost homeopathy wellness center in Portland. And we sat down with a lawyer and we got everything all ready to go. Our logistics were all set. We had a date on the calendar we were going to open. We had our systems in place. And we sat down with a lawyer, and the lawyer said that the homeopaths that are heading this could be charged with practicing medicine without a license, or accused of practicing medicine without a license. And you can imagine what that did to morale and motivation, not to mention access to care. So there are many brave mavericks who practice knowing this, and there are lots of people who are accidentally ignorant of it who are practicing. But we were not able to be ignorant of those risks anymore. And so we began working with Diane Miller and Ann Gillum, who are at the National Health Freedom Action. So safe harbor bills are very simple. They don't create any laws, they don't create new licensure, they don't create new boards, they don't create new practices. All they do is legally exempt practitioners who are in safe, non-licensable modalities from this accusation of practicing medicine without a license. These are things that are already used by millions of people. So they defend the right to practice one's vocation and the right to access healing modalities of your choice. And there are 10 states that already have laws like this. Let me read them to you. Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Louisiana, Rhode Island, California, Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Idaho. And there are active efforts in other states. And when you go to the National Health Freedom Action group, you will see, you can find your state. But I do want to talk a little bit about Maine since I'm active in this effort. And I do want you to come over to safeharbormaine.org and sign up for our mailing list. We also have a Facebook group. I'm going to put all those links in the comments because we need your help. And whether or not you're in Maine, we need donations. The national organization needs donations. This is really powerful stuff, but it's not free to do this work. So for folks that are preparing to speak to legislators, this is something that I wanted to touch on because this is coming up for us right now because we have a coalition and we have a lot of constituents on board. Focus your passion on the positive aspects of your experiences with holistic healing and integrative health, and that will go a long way towards what we are trying to achieve. If you can tell your personal story, there are people who use exclusively these holistic practices, people who use exclusively conventional practices, and lots of people that do both. And if you are someone who is in the professional field in allopathic modalities and can speak to this, that's really helpful for testimony and to legislators. This is about keeping a very high vibration. It's about the spirit of Maine. It's about supporting ourselves and supporting each other across the spectrum of healing. It is the right to practice. It's the right to choose care. And it's health freedom, which is a big, important thing, that you have the freedom to practice your avocation and to pursue health. Listen to me, I'm all legislative effort and I'm involved and this is totally going to ruin my rep. But when I sit down to make a list of things that are scary and that list is too short, it's time to work a little harder. So here I am. Dragons find me. It's a thing. Facing the harder, scary stuff is a skill and it's a muscle you can train. I welcome the opportunity to do it. And homeopathy helps me get at that treasure that that dragon is sitting on. Because it's big homeopathy and it's going to be huge. I'll see you next week.